The council chamber was massive and filled with representatives from 47 different alien species. Daniel Carter stood in the center of the room wearing his formal ambassador uniform. The blue and white colors of Earth looked bright against the dark metal floors. Behind him stood Commander Lisa Monroe in her military dress uniform with her hand resting near her sidearm. They had been waiting for 3 hours to present their petition to the council members. Daniel looked around the circular chamber. The walls rose up 50 feet high and curved inward at the top. Holographic displays floated everywhere showing star maps and data streams. The air smelled strange like chemicals and something sweet that made his nose itch. Every species had its own atmosphere requirements, so the environmental systems pumped a mix that nobody really liked, but everyone could breathe. The Vrexian representative Kilroth finally spoke. He was a massive insect-like creature with 6 arms and black armor plating covering his body. His voice came through translators that made it sound like grinding metal. Ambassador Carter, the Council has reviewed your petition for expanded security zones around human colonies. The request is denied. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. He had expected this answer, but hearing it still made his blood pressure rise. May I ask the reason for the denial? Kilroth's mandibles clicked together, making a sound like breaking sticks. The human species lacks the evolutionary maturity necessary to govern expanded territorial zones. Your aggressive nature makes you unsuitable for additional responsibilities. This decision is final. Lisa shifted her weight behind Daniel. He could feel her anger without looking. 3 weeks ago, they had lost 300 human Marines defending a Vrexian mining colony from raiders. Young men and women who died protecting aliens who now called humans too immature to protect themselves. The irony burned in his chest. The Solarian Chancellor spoke next. He was a small gray creature with huge eyes and a breathing apparatus covering most of his face. The Council acknowledges human military contributions. However, territorial expansion requires more than combat capability. It requires diplomatic sophistication that humanity has not yet demonstrated. We appreciate your service, but the answer is no. Daniel took a deep breath. He had served as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 12 years. 12 long years of watching human soldiers die for alien worlds. 12 years of listening to speeches about how humans were valued members of the galactic community. 12 years of being treated like attack dogs that could be unleashed when convenient and locked away when not needed. He looked at the faces around him. The Corlithian representative with her scaled blue skin, the Dravaxian counselor with his reptilian features and cold yellow eyes, the Zinthari delegate floating in her containment sphere filled with purple gas. Every single one of them had asked for human help at some point. Every single one had promised respect and partnership. Every single one had voted to deny humans basic rights. Ambassador Carter, do you have anything else to present? The Chancellor asked. His tone suggested the meeting was over. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a data chip. He held it up so everyone could see it. I have one more item for the Council record. He walked to the central podium and inserted the chip. Holographic displays lit up all around the chamber. Numbers and statistics filled the air. Combat reports, casualty lists, resource contributions, and treaty obligations. In the 12 years since humanity joined this council, we have participated in 43 military operations, Daniel said. His voice echoed in the large chamber. We have contributed 17% of all combat forces despite being only 2% of the council population. We have lost 3,247 soldiers defending council worlds. We have provided humanitarian aid to 31 member species during disasters and famines. He let the numbers hang in the air. The council members shifted in their seats. Some looked uncomfortable. Others looked annoyed. We have asked for 3 things in return, Daniel continued. Security zones around our outer colonies, which are constantly raided. Fair trade agreements that do not favor founding member species. And representation on the Security Directorate where decisions about military deployments are made. Every request has been denied. Every petition has been rejected. Every appeal has been dismissed. Kilroth's voice cut through the chamber. Ambassador Carter, we have already rendered our decision. This presentation is unnecessary. You're absolutely right, Daniel said. He pulled the data chip from the podium. The decision has been made. Just not the one you think. He turned to face the entire council. Lisa stepped up beside him. They stood together facing down the representatives of 47 worlds. Effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council, Daniel announced. All human military personnel will be recalled from Council operations. All joint defense agreements are terminated. All trade treaties are void. All human aid and support ends today. The chamber exploded with noise. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up, creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Kilroth rose from his seat, his massive frame towering over the podium. You cannot withdraw. There are procedures and protocols. We can and we are, Lisa said. Her voice was calm but hard as steel. You spent 12 years telling us we weren't good enough to be full members. Fine. We accept that assessment. We're leaving. The Solarian Chancellor raised his hands, calling for order. Ambassador, please be reasonable. Withdrawals require a transition period. There are contracts and obligations to fulfill. We fulfilled our obligations every single day, Daniel said. We bled for you. We died for you. We gave you everything you asked for. You gave us nothing but contempt in return. There will be no transition period. Human forces will evacuate within 30 days. After that, you're on your own. The Corlithian representative stood up. Her voice was desperate. But the security situation, the raider attacks. Who will defend the outer territories? That's no longer our problem, Daniel said. He looked directly at her. You wanted humanity to be less involved in council affairs. Congratulations, you got your wish. He turned and walked toward the exit. Lisa followed close behind. The council chamber erupted in chaos behind them. Delegates shouted demands and threats. The chancellor called for them to return. Security protocols activated, making alarm sounds echo through the building. Daniel and Lisa walked through the corridors of the council building. Other human staff members joined them as they passed. Everyone had been briefed on what might happen today. Everyone knew their roles. Within minutes, a stream of human personnel flowed toward the exit. Outside the building, they climbed into a transport shuttle. Lisa sat down heavily in the seat next to Daniel. Think they understand what just happened? Daniel looked back at the massive council complex. It was a structure built over centuries by dozens of species working together. It represented the pinnacle of galactic civilization, and humanity had just walked away from it. They will, Daniel said quietly. Very soon they'll understand exactly what they lost. The question is whether they'll figure it out before everything falls apart. The shuttle lifted off, carrying them away from the council building. Behind them, 47 species scrambled to understand how their reliable human soldiers had suddenly become former members. The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson. Taking people for granted always has consequences. 3 weeks had passed since Ambassador Daniel Carter walked out of the council chamber. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Valiant, watching the evacuation proceed. His ship was one of the last human vessels still in council space. The orders from Earth Command were crystal clear. Retrieve all human personnel, leave nothing behind, and return home. Jake looked at the tactical display showing dozens of transport shuttles moving between his ship and the military station below. Every human soldier, technician, doctor, and civilian contractor was being pulled out. Years of cooperation and joint operations were ending in a matter of days. The bridge crew worked quietly and efficiently, but Jake could feel the tension in the air. Lieutenant Amy Stevens sat at the communications console. She was young and had joined the fleet only 2 years ago. This was her first major deployment, and now it was ending in a way nobody had expected. Her fingers moved across the controls as she monitored multiple channels at once. Suddenly, she stiffened and pressed her hand against her earpiece. Captain, we're receiving a distress call, Amy said. Her voice was tight with concern. It's from the Corellian defense station in Sector 7. They're under attack by Zelthron raiders. Jake walked over to her station. How many raiders? Scanning shows at least 15 ships, Amy replied. The station's shields are holding, but they're taking heavy fire. They're requesting immediate assistance. Jake felt something twist in his stomach. The Corellian station was a place he knew well. He had served there for 6 months last year during a joint patrol operation. He knew the layout of the corridors and the faces of the people who worked there. The station commander was a Corlithian officer named Vareth, who had shared meals with Jake and talked about his family back home. Are there any human personnel on that station? Jake asked. Amy checked her records. No, sir. We evacuated the last of our people from that sector yesterday morning. There are no humans aboard. Jake looked at the tactical display. The Zelthron raiders were the same group that human forces had been fighting for the past 3 years. They attacked merchant ships and mining colonies, stealing whatever they could carry. Human patrols had kept them mostly contained, but now those patrols were gone. The raiders were getting bold. "Captain, the Carillion commander is on the line," Amy said. "He's asking to speak with you directly." Jake hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Put him through." The view screen flickered and Commander Vareth's face appeared. His blue scales looked pale and his eyes were wide with fear. Behind him, Jake could see the station's command center filled with smoke. Alarms were blaring and people were running everywhere. "Captain Morrison, thank the stars," Vareth said. His voice was shaking. "We need your help. The raiders are tearing through our shields. We don't have the firepower to hold them off. Please, we have 3,000 civilians on this station." Jake felt his hands grip the edge of the console. 6 months ago, he would have ordered his ship into combat without a second thought. That was what allies did. They helped each other. But everything had changed 3 weeks ago in that council chamber. "Commander Vareth, what is the status of council reinforcements?" Jake asked. "The nearest council patrol is 4 hours away," Vareth said desperately. "We won't last that long." "Jake, please. You know this station. You know these people. We need you." Amy turned in her chair, looking at Jake. The entire bridge crew was watching him. They all knew what was at stake. One word from him and the Valiant would charge in with weapons firing. They had done it 100 times before. The ship was ready and the crew was willing. Jake looked at the tactical display again. The Carillion station's shields were down to 40%. 2 of their defensive turrets were already destroyed. The Zelthron ships were circling like predators, sensing weakness. It would be a massacre if help didn't arrive soon. "Commander, I need to speak with my command," Jake said. "Stand by." He muted the channel and turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Kevin Grant. "Could we make a difference if we engaged?" Kevin studied his screens. "Yes, sir. The Valiant alone could take out half those raiders in the first pass. With our weapon systems, we could probably save the station." "At what cost to us?" Jake asked. "Minimal, sir," Kevin replied. "The raiders are using outdated weapons. They're no match for our shields and armor. We might take some damage, but nothing serious." Jake looked around the bridge. Every face showed the same expression. They wanted to help. It was what they had been trained to do. It was what they had spent years doing, protecting the weak and fighting the bad guys. That was supposed to be what humanity stood for. But Jake thought about the council chamber. He thought about Ambassador Carter reading out the statistics. 3,000 human soldiers dead, 12 years of service, 43 military operations. And what did humanity get in return? Nothing but rejection and contempt. "Captain, Commander Vareth is requesting a response," Amy said quietly. Jake unmuted the channel. Vareth's face appeared again. His expression was hopeful and desperate at the same time. Jake could see explosions reflecting off the station's hull behind him. "Commander Vareth, your request for assistance is denied," Jake said. The words felt like broken glass in his throat. "The Valiant is under orders to evacuate all human personnel from Council space. We are not authorized to engage in military operations on behalf of the Council." Vareth's face went pale. "Jake, please. You can't be serious. People are going to die." "I'm very serious, Commander," Jake said. He kept his voice flat and professional. "Humanity is no longer a member of the Galactic Council. We have no obligation to defend Council assets or personnel. I suggest you contact your own military for assistance." "They're too far away," Vareth shouted. "You know they won't get here in time. You're condemning us to death." Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. The Council made it very clear that humanity lacks the maturity and sophistication to be trusted with important responsibilities. We're simply honoring that assessment. You wanted us out of Council affairs. Now you have what you wanted. Vareth stared at the screen. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Behind him, another explosion rocked the station. People were screaming in the background. "Good luck, Commander," Jake said. He cut the transmission before Vareth could respond. The bridge was silent. Nobody moved or spoke. Jake could feel their eyes on him. Amy looked like she might cry. Kevin was gripping his console so hard his knuckles were white. The helmsman was staring straight ahead at nothing. "Set course for Earth," Jake ordered. "Maximum speed." "We're going home." "Sir," Amy said softly. "The station won't survive. Those people—" "I know, Lieutenant," Jake said. He didn't look at her. "But they're not our people anymore. The Council wanted independence from human interference. Now they're getting exactly what they asked for." The Valiant's engines powered up. The massive ship turned away from the Carillion sector. On the tactical display, Jake could see the defense station's shields failing. The Zelthron raiders were closing in for the kill. 3,000 lives hung in the balance. Jake sat down in his captain's chair. He kept his eyes forward and his expression neutral. Inside, he felt sick. This was not what he had joined the fleet to do. He had signed up to protect people and fight evil. But orders were orders, and the Council had made their choice. As the Valiant jumped to faster than light speed, Amy's console showed one final transmission from the Carillion station. It was a distress call going out to anyone who would listen. The message repeated over and over, getting weaker each time. Then it stopped completely. The station went dark on the tactical display. Jake closed his eyes. The Council had spent 12 years treating humans like tools. Now they were learning what happened when the tools walked away. The lesson was written in blood and fire. Jake wondered how many more stations would go dark before the Council understood what they had lost. Admiral Patrick Hughes stood in the command center of Luna Station, staring at the massive holographic display that filled the entire wall. The display showed a map of Council space with thousands of star systems represented by tiny points of light. 2 months had passed since humanity withdrew from the Galactic Council. In that short time, the map had changed dramatically. Red markers indicated systems under attack. Black markers showed worlds that had fallen completely. There were far too many black markers. Colonel Melissa Grant walked up beside him carrying a data pad. She was the chief intelligence officer for Earth's military, and her job was to track everything happening in Council space. The lines under her eyes showed she had not been sleeping much. She tapped the data pad and the holographic display zoomed in on a cluster of systems near the galactic rim. "That's the 7th Council member world to fall this month," Melissa said. Her voice was tired and flat. "The Zelthron raiders hit the Backstory homeworld 3 days ago. The planetary defense forces lasted less than 6 hours. Current estimates put civilian casualties at over 2 million. Patrick felt his jaw tighten. 2 million dead. That was the population of a major city. Gone in less than a day. What about Council reinforcements? They sent a fleet, but it arrived too late, Melissa replied. The raiders were already gone with everything they could carry. The Council fleet is now stuck there trying to provide humanitarian aid, but they don't have the resources or training for disaster relief. It's a mess. Patrick walked closer to the display. He could see the pattern clearly now. The raiders were hitting worlds that had relied heavily on human protection. They were targeting the weakest points in Council defenses. Without human patrols to keep them in check, the raiders were running wild. "Show me the casualty reports," Patrick said. Melissa tapped her data pad again. New numbers appeared on the display. Council military forces are taking 70 to 80% casualties in their first engagements with raiders. Their soldiers have no real combat experience. Most Council species haven't fought a serious war in over a century. They relied on humans to do the fighting for them. A junior officer approached with another data pad. His name was Lieutenant Chris Baker, and he looked even younger than his 23 years. "Admiral, we're receiving another communication request from the Solarian Concordat. They want to negotiate humanity's return to the Council." Patrick raised an eyebrow. "What are they offering this time?" "A seat on the Security Directorate and enhanced trade agreements," Chris replied. "They're also offering to pay reparations for human casualties incurred during Council service." "Tell them no," Patrick said without hesitation. "Same answer as last week and the week before that." Chris nodded and walked away. Melissa pulled up another set of data. "It's not just military losses. The economic situation is getting worse. 17 major trade routes are now too dangerous for commercial traffic. Merchant ships won't travel without military escorts, and the Council doesn't have enough ships to protect them. Their economy is contracting by 4% every month." Patrick studied the trade route data. Those 17 routes had carried everything from food to medical supplies to raw materials. Entire planets depended on that commerce. Without it, people would starve. Industries would collapse. The Council's economy was built on the assumption of safe travel between worlds. That assumption no longer held true. "How many worlds are experiencing food shortages?" Patrick asked. 23 at last count, Melissa said. "The Council is trying to redistribute supplies, but their logistics network is falling apart. They're used to humans handling the complicated coordination. Their own people can't keep up." The display shifted to show refugee movements. Millions of people were fleeing from the outer territories toward the core worlds. The core worlds were already overcrowded and running out of resources to help the refugees. Camps were springing up on dozens of planets. Disease was spreading. Children were dying. Patrick felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had spent 30 years in the military. He had fought in wars and commanded fleets. He had seen death and destruction up close. But watching an entire galactic civilization collapse in slow motion was something different. This was not a war. This was the consequences of decades of poor decisions finally coming due. "Any word from Ambassador Carter?" Patrick asked. "He's still on Earth meeting with the President and her cabinet," Melissa replied. "The political situation is complicated. Some people think we should help. Others think the Council deserves everything that's happening to them." Patrick understood both sides. The Council had treated humanity badly. They had used human soldiers as disposable troops and never given them the respect they deserved. Walking away had been the right decision. But watching billions of innocent civilians suffer was hard. Most of those people had nothing to do with Council politics. They were just ordinary folks trying to live their lives. "Show me the latest raider activity," Patrick said. The display changed to show attack patterns. The Zelthron raiders were the most active, but they were not alone. The Karnak clans had emerged from their territory and were raiding border worlds. Independent pirate groups that had stayed hidden for years were now attacking openly. Even species that had been peaceful traders were turning to piracy because the risk was low and the rewards were high. "They're getting bolder," Melissa observed. "Last week a raider group attacked a convoy in the Tertian system. That's only 3 jumps from the Council homeworld. They would never have dared to come that close when human patrols were active." Patrick nodded. The raiders had learned over the years exactly how far they could push before human forces responded. They had learned to fear human ships and human tactics, but now the humans were gone. The fear was gone too. The raiders were testing the limits of Council defenses and finding those defenses to be paper thin. "What's the prediction for next month?" Patrick asked. Melissa pulled up a projection model. "If current trends continue, we estimate 15 to 20 more worlds will fall. The Council's military is completely overstretched. They're trying to defend too much territory with too few ships. Every time they concentrate forces in one area, the raiders hit somewhere else. It's like trying to hold back the ocean with a bucket." A communication alert sounded. Chris Baker returned looking nervous. "Admiral, we have an urgent message from the Vrexian Military Command. They're requesting immediate assistance. A raider fleet of over 50 ships is attacking their primary shipyard facility. They say if the shipyard falls, their ability to build new ships is finished." Patrick looked at Melissa. "The Vrexians. They're the ones who called us too immature to govern our own colonies." "Yes, sir," Melissa confirmed. Their representative Kilroth was one of the loudest voices arguing against human requests. Patrick walked to the window overlooking Earth below. The planet looked peaceful from up here. Blue oceans and white clouds. Green continents. It was hard to believe that the galaxy was tearing itself apart just a few light years away. "What's your recommendation?" Patrick asked. Melissa was quiet for a moment. "Strategically, the Vrexian shipyard is important. If it falls, the Council loses their primary source of new military vessels. That makes the collapse accelerate. But politically, helping the Vrexians sends a message that will come running whenever they call. It undermines our entire position." Patrick turned back to the display. The red markers kept multiplying. Every hour brought news of another attack. Every day saw another world fall into chaos. The Council had built their civilization on human protection and human sacrifice. Now that foundation was gone and everything was crumbling. "Send a response to the Vrexians," Patrick said finally. "Tell them their request is denied. Tell them that humanity is no longer responsible for Council security. Tell them they're on their own." Chris saluted and left. Melissa looked at Patrick with an unreadable expression. "That shipyard is going to fall. Thousands of workers are going to die." "I know," Patrick said quietly, "but we gave them 12 years to treat us with basic respect. They chose contempt instead. This is the consequence of that choice. The Council wanted independence from human interference. Now they're learning what independence actually costs." The holographic display flickered as new data came in. Another world under attack. Another distress call going unanswered. Another piece of galactic civilization falling into darkness. Patrick watched it all and wondered how much longer the Council could survive. The answer seemed to be not very long at all. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in the organization's 300-year history. Chancellor Variman stood at the central podium trying to maintain order, but the assembled representatives were beyond controlling. Voices shouted over each other in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up, creating a chaotic mix of overlapping demands and accusations. Kilroth, the Vrexian military commander, slammed his 6 arms on his desk, making a sound like thunder. His black armor was scorched from recent combat and one of his mandibles was cracked. 14 core worlds have fallen in 3 months. 14. Our fleets are scattered across 100 systems trying to defend everything and protecting nothing. We must bring the humans back. The Corlithian ambassador rose from her seat. Her blue scales were dull and her voice cracked with emotion. My home world is under siege right now. 3 million civilians are trapped in the capital city, while raiders bomb them from orbit. Our defense forces are fighting with outdated weapons and no training. Where are the humans who promised to protect us? They left because we drove them away, a voice called out. Councillor Thane, the Dravaxian representative, stood up. His yellow eyes were cold and angry. We treated them like servants for 12 years. We used their soldiers as cannon fodder. We denied them every reasonable request they made. And now we sit here wondering why they won't save us. This is what we deserve. The chamber fell silent. The brutal honesty cut through the chaos like a knife. Chancellor Variman cleared his throat. Councillor Thane, while your perspective is noted, we must focus on solutions rather than assigning blame. Blame. Thane's voice rose. We're past blame. We're watching our civilization collapse. 20% of our territory is gone. Our economy is in free fall. Millions are dead. And you want to avoid assigning blame? A Xanthari representative floated forward in her containment sphere. Her voice came through speakers mounted on the sphere. What matters now is bringing humanity back. What do they want? What will convince them to help us? Chancellor Variman pulled up a holographic display showing the communication history between the Council and Earth. We have made 7 formal offers in the past 2 months. We offered them a seat on the Security Directorate. We offered enhanced trade agreements. We offered to pay reparations for their casualties. Every offer has been rejected. Kilroth's mandibles clacked furiously. Then we offer them more. Give them control of the military command structure. Give them veto power over council decisions. Give them whatever they want. And what happens to council sovereignty? The Solarian military advisor asked. He was standing next to Chancellor Variman, looking exhausted. If we give humans veto power, we essentially hand them control of the entire council. Is that what we've become? Beggars willing to surrender everything. We already are beggars, Thane said flatly. We're begging them to save us from our own stupidity. The question is not whether we give up sovereignty. The question is whether we have any sovereignty left to give up. In 6 months, there might not be a council at all. The Baxtari representative spoke up. His species had just lost their homeworld to raiders. His voice was barely a whisper. 2 million of my people are dead. The raiders took everything. Our cities are burning. Our children are starving. I don't care about sovereignty or pride. I care about survival. Whatever the humans want, give it to them. Chancellor Variman looked around the chamber. He saw fear and desperation on every face. These were species that had lived in peace and prosperity for generations. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle. They had forgotten what it meant to fight for survival. The humans had protected them for so long that they had grown soft. There is one option we have not tried, Variman said carefully. A formal apology. Not just words, but actions. We acknowledge that we failed humanity. We admit that we used them and disrespected them. We offer them full council membership with equal status to founding members. We give them command authority over joint military operations. And we pay compensation to every family that lost someone in council service. The chamber erupted again. Half the representatives shouted approval. The other half shouted objections. Kilroth was clicking his mandibles so fast it sounded like machine gun fire. This is humiliation. We're surrendering to a species that's barely been in space for 200 years. We're not surrendering, Variman said. We're admitting the truth. Without humans, our military is useless. Without humans, our trade routes are unsafe. Without humans, our civilization is dying. They were never our servants. They were our protectors. We failed to see the difference until it was too late. A vote was called. The holographic display showed the results in real time. 32 species voted in favor of the formal apology and new terms. 11 voted against. 4 abstained. The motion passed. Meanwhile on Earth, Ambassador Daniel Carter sat in a conference room with President Helen Martinez and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The room was deep underground in a secure facility. The walls were covered with screens showing news feeds from council space. Every screen told the same story: chaos and collapse. General Nathan Cross sat at the head of the table. He was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and had served in the military for 40 years. His gray hair and weathered face showed every one of those years. The council just voted to offer us everything we originally asked for: full membership, security council seat, command authority, and reparations. President Martinez looked at Daniel. "What do you think?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. He had spent 12 years as the ambassador to the council. He had watched human soldiers die while council members gave speeches about evolution and maturity. He had sat through countless sessions where human requests were denied with barely a discussion. The anger still burned in his chest. "It's too late," Daniel said. "They had 12 years to offer us a partnership. They chose to treat us as hired muscle instead. Now their civilization is falling apart and suddenly they want us to be equals. Where was this respect when we were bleeding for them?" Nathan nodded. "I agree. Our people died by the thousands. 3,000 human lives lost defending worlds that weren't ours. And what did we get? Rejection and contempt. They don't deserve our help." But President Martinez was watching the screens. One feed showed refugee camps stretching for miles. Another showed a burning city on a Corlithian world. A third showed bodies being pulled from rubble after a raider attack. Those are civilians. Most of them had nothing to do with council politics. They're just people trying to survive. "That's not our responsibility," Nathan said firmly. "We warned the council what would happen. We told them their military was inadequate. We told them the raiders would grow bold without human patrols. They ignored every warning. This is the consequence of their choices." Daniel stood up and walked to the screens. He watched a mother holding a child in one of the refugee camps. The child looked thin and sick. The mother's face showed the kind of desperation that came from losing everything. He thought about his own family back home. His daughter was about the same age as that child. "We were better than them," Daniel said quietly. "That's what made us different. The council treated us badly, but we still did the right thing. We protected the weak. We fought against evil. If we turn our backs now, how are we any better than they were?" Nathan stood up. "We're not turning our backs. We're teaching them a lesson. Actions have consequences. You can't treat people like garbage and expect them to save you when things get bad. The people dying in those camps didn't treat us like garbage," President Martinez said. "The council leadership did. But we're punishing everyone for the crimes of a few. Is that really who we want to be?" The room fell silent. On the screens, another city was burning. Another world was falling. Another million lives hung in the balance. The council had brought this on themselves through arrogance and short-sightedness. But the price was being paid by people who had no voice in council decisions. "There might be a middle path," Daniel said slowly. "We don't rejoin the council. We maintain our independence, but we offer our services as contractors. We defend council space, but we do it on our terms. Our command structure stays intact. Our forces answer only to our officers. We help because we choose to, not because we're obligated to." Nathan frowned. "That makes us mercenaries." "That makes us partners," Daniel corrected. "Equal partners with independent authority. The council wanted us gone. Fine, we're gone. But if they want our help, they pay for it. They respect our autonomy, and they never forget what it costs when they take us for granted." President Martinez looked at the screens for a long time. Finally, she turned to face them. "Draft the terms. Make it clear this is not a return to the old arrangement. Humanity acts independently. We help when and how we choose. And if the council ever treats us as subordinates again, we walk away permanently. No warnings. No second chances," Daniel nodded. "I'll contact Chancellor Variman, but we move slowly. Let them understand the depth of their mistake before we offer any relief." The meeting ended and everyone filed out. Daniel stayed behind watching the screens. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson about respect and consequences. The question was whether anyone would survive long enough to remember it. Captain Jake Morrison sat in a small cafe in New Seattle, watching the rain fall against the windows. 6 months had passed since he left the Carillion station to burn. 6 months since he followed orders and watched 3,000 people die. He had been back on Earth for 4 months now, and the nightmares still came every night. He could still see Commander Verath's face on the view screen begging for help. A woman walked into the cafe and looked around. She spotted Jake and walked over to his table. She was young, with dark hair pulled back in a professional style. Her clothing marked her as government, but she wore no military uniform. She sat down across from him without asking permission. "Captain Morrison, my name is Kelly Barnes. I work for the State Department. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Jake looked at her over his coffee cup. "If this is about a job offer, I'm not interested. I'm on leave and planning to retire when my leave ends." Kelly pulled out a data pad and set it on the table. "This isn't a job offer exactly. The President is considering a new policy regarding the Galactic Council situation. We're interviewing military personnel who served in Council space to get their perspective." Jake laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My perspective is that the Council can solve their own problems. They wanted us gone. They got their wish. Now they can live with the consequences. Is that really how you feel?" Kelly asked. She pulled up images on the data pad. Refugee camps. Burning cities. Children crying. These people are dying by the millions. Most of them never had any say in Council policy. Jake felt anger rise in his chest. "You know what I see when I look at those pictures? I see the faces of 300 human Marines who died defending a Vrexian mining colony. I see my friend Pete who got blown up protecting a convoy. I see Sarah who lost both legs fighting raiders near the Corlithian border. I see 3,000 human soldiers who gave everything and got nothing in return." Kelly nodded slowly. "You're right to be angry. The Council treated humanity terribly, but anger doesn't bring back the dead, and it doesn't stop more people from dying. What exactly does the State Department want from me?" Jake asked. Kelly tapped the data pad and a new document appeared. "The President is considering a proposal, not rejoining the Council but offering military services as an independent contractor. We would defend Council space but on our terms. Human forces would operate under human command. We would choose which operations to participate in. We help because we decide to, not because we're obligated to." Jake stared at the document. "So we become mercenaries. The Council pays us to do what we used to do for free." "We become partners," Kelly corrected. "Equal partners with complete autonomy. The Council wanted to treat us as subordinates. That option is gone forever. Now if they want our help, they have to respect our independence and pay for our services." Jake thought about the Carillion station again. Commander Verath's desperate voice echoed in his memory. "Why are you asking me about this?" "Because you made a hard choice," Kelly said. "You followed orders and left that station to die. That decision haunts you. I can see it in your face. The President wants to know if officers like you would be willing to go back, not as servants to the Council but as independent operators." Jake looked out the window at the rain. Commander Lisa Monroe from the ambassador's staff. "What does she think about this?" "She volunteered to lead the first response fleet if the President approves the plan," Kelly replied. "She said the Council leadership deserves everything that happened to them. But the civilians caught in the middle don't deserve to suffer for political failures." Jake picked up his coffee cup but set it down without drinking. "If we go back, it has to be different. No more joint commands where Council officers give humans orders. No more suicide missions because some Council member thinks human lives are expendable. We operate independently or we don't operate at all." Kelly nodded. "That's exactly what the proposal says. Human forces answer only to human commanders. The Council can request assistance but they can't demand it. We choose our missions based on our own strategic assessment." "And if the Council doesn't like our decisions?" Jake asked. "Then they can figure it out themselves," Kelly said simply. "The whole point is that we're not subordinates anymore. We're an independent force that sometimes cooperates with the Council. They don't get a vote in how we operate." Jake stood up and walked to the window. The rain was coming down harder now. People on the street were running for cover. He watched them for a moment, then turned back to Kelly. "You want to know if I'll go back," Jake said. "The answer is yes, but not because I forgive the Council. I don't. They earned every bit of suffering they're experiencing now. I'll go back because leaving people to die when I could save them makes me no better than the Council leaders who used us as disposable troops." Kelly stood up and offered her hand. "The President will want to hear that directly. Would you be willing to meet with her?" Jake shook her hand. "On one condition. Whatever we do, we make it clear to the Council that this is not a return to the old relationship. They burned that bridge when they rejected us. This is something new and it's built on our terms or it doesn't happen at all." "Understood," Kelly said. She picked up her data pad. One more question. When we go back, what message should we send to the Council? Jake thought about that for a long moment. He thought about the 3,000 humans who died in Council service. He thought about Commander Verath and the Carillion station. He thought about the millions of civilians suffering in refugee camps. He thought about what kind of civilization humanity wanted to be. Tell them that humans don't abandon people who need help, Jake said finally. But tell them we also don't forget who abandoned us. The Council wanted us gone and they got their wish. They learned what the galaxy looks like without human protection. Now if we come back, it's because we're better than they were, not because they deserve our help. And if they ever treat us as subordinates again, we'll walk away and never come back. No warnings, no second chances. This is their one opportunity to get it right. Kelly nodded and made notes on her datapad. The President is meeting with the Joint Chiefs tomorrow. I'll make sure your perspective is included in the briefing. She left the cafe and Jake sat back down. His coffee was cold now, but he drank it anyway. Outside, the rain continued to fall. Somewhere up in the sky beyond the clouds, the galaxy was tearing itself apart. The Council had built their civilization on human sacrifice and human blood. They had taken humanity for granted. Now they were paying the price. But Jake thought about the children in those refugee camps. He thought about families torn apart by war. He thought about ordinary people who just wanted to live their lives in peace. They didn't make the Council's decisions. They didn't vote to treat humans badly. They were just caught in the middle of a political disaster. 3 days later, Jake stood on the bridge of the Earth defense ship Valiant again. The ship had been refitted and upgraded during the months back home. New weapon systems, better shields, and improved sensors. But it was still the same ship. Still the same crew. Commander Lisa Monroe stood beside him. She had accepted command of the First Response Fleet. Behind her were Admiral Patrick Hughes and Ambassador Daniel Carter. They had all come to see the fleet off. The Council has agreed to all our terms, Daniel said. Independent command structure, autonomous operations, fair compensation, and a formal apology acknowledging how they treated us. Words are cheap, Lisa said. Actions matter. We'll see if they really learned anything. Admiral Patrick looked at Jake. You don't have to do this. You could retire, live a quiet life. No one would blame you. Jake looked at the view screen showing Earth below. His home, his family, everything he was leaving behind again. I joined the fleet to protect people. The Council took advantage of that. They used us. But I can't let their mistakes turn me into someone who stands by while millions die. If I do that, then they've won. They've turned me into the same kind of person who treated us as disposable. The fleet consisted of 20 ships, not a huge force, but enough to make a difference. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who understood the risks. They were going back into a war zone. They would face raiders and pirates. Some of them would not come home, but they were going back on their terms, not as servants, not as subordinates, as an independent military force that chose to help because it was the right thing to do. Fleet is ready to depart, the communications officer reported. Jake took his seat in the captain's chair. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. We're returning to Council space, but this is not a return to the old ways. We operate under our own command. We choose our missions. We protect those who can't protect themselves, and we show the galaxy that humans keep their word even when others break theirs. Fleet, prepare for jump. The engines powered up. One by one, the ships jumped to faster than light speed. They were heading back to a galaxy at war, back to a council that had failed them, back to people who needed help. The moment humans had abandoned the Galactic Council, everything had fallen apart. The Council had learned what they lost. They had learned the cost of taking people for granted. They had learned that respect had to be earned and could not be demanded.